Hi guys, welcome back to Foliage Loft. My name is Liam, and in today's video we're going to talk about one of the most popular families of plants, Epipremnums, also known as the Pothos family. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about pothos plants in general, and then I'm going to show you 4 different pothos varieties that I have, and hopefully that'll show you that no matter what your personal style is, there's going to be a pothos plant that's perfect for you. Let's get right into it. Like so many plant people out there, the pothos plant was one of the first houseplants that I purchased. And I was first attracted to it because 1, it had a really low price, 2, they're really common, you can find them just about anywhere, and 3, they're really easy to take care of. And whether you allow these plants to climb up a support system or whether you allow them to trail, they're a really beautiful natural addition to your home. And inside the home, they're tough, resilient, and they'll spark joy for you for years to come, even if you only offer them with the most basic care. I find a lot of other easy care plants like ZZ plants or snake plants, they have a very specific look to them, and because of their succulent leaves, they can often have kind of a hard and sharp look to them, whereas pothos plants have this really nice, soft, natural look to them, especially when they trail. And to keep pothos plants looking as lush as possible, you're just going to want to follow some pretty basic principles. The first thing you want to follow is the dry then soak principle. And this simply means that you're going to allow the plant to almost fully dry out, and then when you go to water it again, you're going to fully soak that pot until you see lots of water flowing out from the bottom of the pot. The amount of time that it's going to take to dry out is going to vary. There's several factors, including humidity, light levels, and time of year. But you can probably expect it to take from somewhere between 5 to 14 days for your pothos plant to fully dry out. And you'll be able to quickly determine if your plant needs some water by using a moisture meter, dipping your finger into the soil, or just basically feeling the weight of the pot. You'll want to fertilize your pothos plants bi-weekly in the growing season. They are fast growers and therefore they're pretty heavy feeders. But when the growing season is coming to an end and you notice your plant isn't growing quite as quickly as before, it's probably a good idea to back off that fertilizer until the next growing season. And when it comes to humidity and light levels, these plants are super versatile, which makes them great for beginners. You can place these plants just about anywhere in your home. As long as they're receiving a little bit of light, they'll survive just fine. And the same applies to humidity, so as long as your humidity is, 10 to 20% on the low end, you should be fine. Now that being said, if you can provide your plant with humidity levels over 50%, and you can provide your plant with a lot of bright indirect light, your plant will grow faster, and you'll also have more impressive leaf size as well. Pothos plants can get pests from time to time, but from my experience, they're very resilient to any kind of houseplant pests, and I've never had any problems with pests on my pothos plants. The one thing you want to watch out for with pothos plants is they are toxic, so just make sure you put them somewhere safe and out of reach of your kids or pets. So now that you know something about the care requirements for these plants, let's jump into some specific varieties that you might be able to find at your local plant shop. Now first up on our list is one of the more uncommon pothos. This is the Cebu Blue pothos. Now this is not a rare plant by any means, but it is definitely more on the uncommon side, especially for a pothos. So you may need to look into more of a specialty plant shop to find one of these plants. So you can probably see where the name Cebu Blue comes from. It has this really interesting silverish bluish hue to the leaves, and it really helps it to stand out amongst the other pothos varieties. And the leaves are also quite long and thin on the Cebu Blue compared to some of the more heart-shaped leaves you'll find on other pothos varieties. And this is a plant that I picked up pretty recently. I think I bought it about 2 months back, and it's already pushed out 2 brand new leaves, and a third one is just unfurling right now. So just like all the other pothos varieties, this is a really fast grower, and I'm really excited to see what this one's going to look like down the road. And next up we have the neon pothos. And this is going to be a really incredible plant if you're looking for a really bright pop of color in your home. And unlike the Cebu Blue with those long thin leaves, this one has more of the classic heart-shaped leaves that you're used to on most other pothos plants. And this is the only pothos plant I've had a hard time to get growing properly. I think it was an issue with the soil that it originally came in. It was quite hard and compacted, and about 2 months back I switched this over to my own custom soil mix, and ever since then it's been pushing out a lot more new growth, and it seems a lot happier now. I think this plant has pushed out more new growth in the past 2 months since I repotted it than it did in the previous 6 months after bringing it home. And I think this one does have the biggest leaves of any of the pothos plants that I have. They're pretty impressive. And I'd imagine that if I put this on a trellis or if I allowed it to climb up a moss pole, this plant would grow even bigger leaves. But obviously the main appeal of this plant is the brilliant chartreuse color. So if the color palette of your home is on the brighter side, this is going to be the perfect Epipremnum for you. And the neon pothos is just as resilient and fast growing as the rest of the pothos family, so it should reward you with new bright foliage all the time. And next up we have probably the most eye-catching variety of the pothos family, and this is the marble queen pothos. It's a pretty regal name for what I think is a pretty majestic looking plant. It's got this really incredible white variegation on the leaves, and variegation is obviously something that a lot of plant people are just absolutely crazy for, and it can be pretty expensive, especially in some varieties of philodendron or monstera. You could be paying upwards of $100, $200, or $300 just for a small plant with this kind of coloration. But with this marble queen pothos, you can get a similar look for a very small fraction of the price. You should definitely be able to find a small marble queen pothos like this for about $10 to $20 at your local plant shop, and that's just because it's so easy to grow, it's easy to propagate, and it's just so fast growing. Now if you fail to provide the marble queen pothos with enough light, it can lose this white variegation and it will revert back to a jade pothos, so it'll just be all green. So you definitely want to put it in a spot where it's going to get a lot of sunlight, but try to avoid putting it in direct sunlight, as this plant is pretty susceptible to getting sunburned. And this is another plant that I recently switched over to my own custom soil mix, and after I repotted it, it did kind of slow down growing for about 2 weeks, and then in the past couple of weeks it's kind of got back to its old self and it's pushing out new leaves every week. But yeah, I think this one is just such a stunning plant, and I think especially for the low price, I don't think you can go wrong. Definitely get out there and try to pick one of these guys up. I left the most common pothos for the end of this video. This is the legendary golden pothos, and this plant is just so common and widespread. You'll find it everywhere. Any plant shop you go to will have this plant. You'll see it in stores and shopping malls and office buildings all over the world. And it's so widespread and common that you can probably find either free cuttings or even a free small plant if you look in the right places. While the marble queen had that really pretty white variegation, this golden pothos has more of a yellow variegation to it. You can see on some of the leaves here. And just like the marble queen, I mentioned that if you don't put it in a bright enough spot, it can actually lose the variegation over time, and this has happened to my golden pothos. It still has some variegation on some of the leaves, but it is slowly reverting back to its jade pothos form, which just means that a lot of the new growth on this plant is just all green and is lacking that yellow variegation. So I've had it in a spot that was about 10 feet away from a north-facing window and about 20 feet away from a south-facing window. So it does get a lot of indirect light, but it's not getting that bright indirect light that it needs to keep the variegation. So obviously I could move this plant to a brighter spot in my home if I wanted to get some of this yellow variegation to come back, but I really like the location of where this plant is. It trails down off my kitchen island, and I think it gives the kitchen a really nice relaxed feeling. So I'm just going to keep it there, and you know what, if I lose this variegation, I think the plant is still beautiful in its green jade form. But yeah, this is one of the first plants that I ever purchased, and it's treated me really well. It's been super easy to take care of, and I've already propagated this one several times and given away plants to some friends and family, and it really is super forgiving. So if you do overwater this one or underwater this one a few times, it's probably going to pull through, and it feels as though this plant is just always pushing out new growth, even in the dead of winter here in Canada. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys found this introduction to the pothos family enjoyable. If you did enjoy the content, please make sure you hit that like button down below, and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And thank you guys so much for watching. Until next week, see ya.